So hello everyone. My name is Sola Abulu. I'm the principal consultant of Sola Abulu and Associates. Um, I would like to. This video is this video is about strategic communications. It's going to be very brief as much as possible. And so I set up this video first of all because this month of November we're talking about Sorry, resume sharing. This month of November, we're talking about strategic communications, and I'm thinking through like ways in which we can broach the topic. We're having a session, online live session on the 27th of November, which is about a week or so from now. Yeah, less than 2 weeks. And it's a full day session. If you want to join us, please register. You can see the details, on the platform that you're watching this. But I just thought about a short video that I could do just to show how strategic communications works. And because I think many of us, we play, I think when you come into the profession, you are introduced firstly to the tactical side of things before you get introduced into the strategic side of things. So this is just me sort of like showing how it works in practical terms. If you would like to learn more, of course, you probably have to join us in class, but this is a starting point. Nonetheless, just a quick way to really look. So the way I like to approach strategic comms, first of all, is, and again, the definition of strategic comms is about the purposeful use of communications by an organization to fulfill its mission. That's what it means. So when we're saying strategic comms, so communications is not a buzzword, it's actually describing a process of communication where an organization takes a very purposeful approach to make sure that it sends out a message and that it passes it and it gets the results that you want. Now, remember, communication, when you are communicating on behalf of a business or an organization, there is a mission, there's something that needs to be achieved, there's a purpose. And I think we do not understand this, we don't emphasize this enough because I think sometimes people think that it's just enough to communicate, whether or not the results is almost like you're playing a gamble. Well, let's just do it and see what happens. No, that's not the way communications is done in the 21st century, and that's not the way organizations should communicate. You should communicate with the intent to achieve impact, to fulfill purpose, or to achieve an objective or a goal. And if because communication is an activity, just like if you're going to deliver a package, you're Amazon or you want to your role is to deliver packages to people. You don't do the logistics with hoping that it works. No, you put in place things to make sure that once the package gets to the warehouse, there's a process in place that ensures that it gets to the doorstep and that the person that is coming knows that the package is coming, it's received, and it gets to the user within the time frame that is agreed. So there's a lot of steps that you put in place to make sure that that service delivery is achieved to the quality, to the standard at the time and in the way, and to the expectation of the receiver, and also in a way that the value that you get from doing that piece of work is justified as the service provider. That's exactly how communications is. It has a mission. So until it achieves the desired intent or the required objective, it is not successful. The job is not yet done. And the only way you can do this is by having a process in place that ensures that, just like Amazon has a process in place to ensure that packages get to the rightful owner or the receiver, you also have to have a process in place to ensure that your communications is packaged well and that it gets to the desired receiver in the right state, in the right mind, and that the action that you require from them, you get it at the end of the day. So what's the starting point? My starting point, the way we like to look at it, the way strategic framework, communications framework works, you start off first of all by looking at the business or the organizational strategy. You don't not start off by saying, oh, well, you don't start off from communications, which is what a lot of people do. In fact, some people start off with communications tactics when they say, oh, we're going to do banner. They just say, oh, we're having an event, and they don't tell you what the event is, what you're trying to achieve, and all of that. But you're supposed to start from what is the business actually trying to achieve on a high level. If somebody is coming to you, they want to do a product launch campaign, you first need to understand, what does this product mean to this business? Don't start from the product, because by the time you start from the product, you already missed out on a very, very important context. Find out first what's going on in that company. What is the business about? Is this product one of several products? What are the other products that they are doing? Is there any other product launches coming up? What's the history of this company? When you understand the goals, what they want to achieve now, and the context of the company, you can also look at what their performance targets are. In other words, how important is this product launch to this company? All of that is important because if you don't get all of that information, I don't even understand how you can even be coming up with goals and objectives because you're not even going to be suggesting anything that is contextual for that organization. That product launch, it may be one, maybe the company has like 10 products, but that particular product launch is more important than the other 10. So that will then, if that is the case, and it's a product that we're actually intending that is going to, maybe the company has been in the red for a long time, and then that product is intended to actually take the company out of the red, then definitely if the idea is to have a product launch and I'm supposed to come up with a communication strategy for that product launch, it's going to be different from if I'm just doing a product launch for a product that is just one of many. And by the way, it's not, it's not a big revenue earner. The expectations upon that product launch are not so high. The business context will drive how we set, how big or how wide or how deep we set the communications goals and objectives. Of course, I also need to know what is the sales or the marketing performance of the business entry, the target that have been set for that product. On a business level, what is the expectation? How much has the business invested in this product? Forget communications, forget marketing. How much have they invested in it that they're hoping to recoup over time? What role does communications play in this? That's what would then make me come up with the communications goals and objectives. And then after that, you're then talking about success criteria. What does success look like for the communication strategy? How will I know that this strategy is successful? What do we want to see? And this is not talking about engagement now, because that's another thing that some of our comms people, anything you are thinking, oh, engagement, reach, impressions. No, that's not what we're talking about here. When you say desired outcome, they are saying, do I want people to sign up? Are we hoping that after this launch, we're going to be invited into this conversation, or we're going to attract more investment, or we're going to be able to scale up the production of this plant, or some of the conversations that are in play, maybe with bankers, with lenders, and all of that, that by the time we finish this launch, that would help to push, the conversations down the line. We can get the kind of money and the investment we need. What does success look like? Tangible, real life things that have impact on the business. And then when you then do that, then, that then becomes, you look at the role that communications can play in that. So then even ideas around what the event should look like, or whatever the product launch or whatever is going to look like, who do we need to invite? What kind of conversations do we need to have? What kind of conference sessions? How can we help this agenda that we have, this underlying agenda? How do we ensure that everything that we do on the communication side and the stakeholder engagement side supports that business or organizational agenda? Are you following me? Or that institutional agenda? That's how strategic communications is done. It starts with big picture thinking and then begins to bring it down into tactical communication. But you have to start big. This is the way it goes. But I see people, they just start like this. And then later they'll be wondering why there's a disconnect between what they do and the business feels communication, you're just spending money, we don't see the value. Yes, now, because communication started from here, whereas they should have started from here and come the way down. So anyways, then you now look at the audience. Who should we be talking to? Very, very important. And then what's the strategy around reaching that audience? And then what's the plan? Now, I just want to make this distinction there because you're going to see strategy and plan all the way through. Every communication strategy, there's a strategy which is high level. In other words, this is what we're trying to achieve. This is why. This is what success looks like. This is what we're hoping to get out of this. And then you now break it down into little things like this is the message. This is who we're targeting. This is where we're going to say it. This is why. These are the events. You break it down into a plan. And that plan, we talk about time. We talk about dates. We talk about money. We talk about who. We talk about what, where, that it becomes something that you can implement. But the strategy gives a sense of what, the why and the how. But the plan will break it down into specific what's that people can then take and begin to tick one by one. But the plan should always be guided by the strategy. Again, another problem is many of us, we go straight to plan without a strategy. I have gotten to the place in my career where I find it very important, I find it almost impossible to work a plan without a strategy because I've seen that you are just moving without direction. You don't even know, you just know that you're in motion, but motion without purpose. So it's a problem because when you have a purpose, then you are able to raise set standards because So somebody has already given you a high level vision of where you should be. So when somebody brings something to you, you can say you are able to make choices about, no, this is not what we want, because you already know the expectation at the strategic level. When you don't have that expectation, you will say yes to the wrong things, and you will say no to the right, to the right things, to the things that you should say yes to. It will be confusing. So that vision, that strategic direction, I find it very invaluable. And again, this is all part of strategic communication. These are the things I will teach in class. So fine, you need to know who your audience is. What is your strategy around the audience? And what is the plan? You have to break it down, because once you've decided, okay, for instance, maybe my audience is Africans of a particular age group in a particular sector of a particular gender or community-based thinking, or this digital community. Okay, they're my target. How am I going to reach them? And of course, why am I even targeting them in the first place? So first of all, I have to find a way to, audience strategy will help me to rope in, to link in the reason why I am choosing that particular audience and how it links into my success criteria, how it links into my communication goals, how it links to my performance. It must go all the way up. You cannot just be, it's not just enough to just say, oh, these are the people, I want, this is what I'm targeting. You have to be able to say, I have to be able to demonstrate and show why I'm targeting these set of people and how it links in with the business goals and the context and the strategy that was already, that we had seen from the business side from the very beginning. And that's the way the entire strategic communications process will go. That link has to be seen. You really need to see the link. Yeah, you really need to see the link. Sorry about that. From all sectors. So sorry, I need to put this back again in slideshow mode. I'm hoping this will show you all along. So you need to see that. So if you then come down to so that's the audience segment telling you about that. Then the audience, the stakeholder management strategy and plan. You also need to then look at who are the stakeholders, who am I, who are the people that I need to target with regard to this initiative or this product launch or whatever. How do we want to engage with them? How are we going to manage them? It's very important, because again, if there's a product launch, you need to know who the stakeholders are. Do I have investors? Are there customers? Are there suppliers? The employees, the government, regulatory bodies, all of them need to be carried along. Otherwise, you will have problems. I mean, I know one company that tried to do a product launch at some point in time. They hadn't done their legal and their regulatory work. By the time they did a big launch, the regulators shut it down. Those are the kind of things, if you don't have a stakeholder management plan, you are likely to fall into that kind of problem. So again, these are the things we talk about strategic communications actually enabling business. If they had had somebody who was doing strategic communications and was also working with a stakeholder management plan, that gap would have come up, because we'll have been like, who are the regulators? Are they aware? In the purpose of coming up with the event and all of that, it would have come up. There would have been conversation that would have made you know before that public name and shame that you have an issue with this regulator. Because in the planning, in the purpose of inviting them for the event or whatever, it would have come out that, why are you doing this? Is this really, in like their concerns would have been bubbled up. So again, these are some of the things that we teach in the strategic communications uh, course. We teach you all the frameworks that you need to be able to function in a strategic way. Again, many of these things are relevant when you work in big organizations or support big brands or big acquisitions or big trade, anything big and major. Because then the stakes are high, the organization is complex, the business transactions are quite complex, and stakeholders are many. So there's nothing simple. No matter how simple it looks, there can be a lot of underlying complexity. So it is important that these communications professionals understand this and they're able to manage it. And the only process that enables you to manage it is the strategic communications framework. So in line with that as well, you also, so your communication strategy, all this is all within communication strategy. And you can develop a communication strategy for an organization for a year. Like you can have your 2026 strategic communication strategy. You can have a communication strategy for a project. You can have it for a program. You can have it for an event like this one. I'm saying using an example of a product launch. But that's the way it is. The communications strategy framework can be used for a period. It can be used for an annual to support a business plan, an activity plan, or to support a specific project, a program, or an event. But it's the same steps that you follow. You start for the business context. What is this business trying to achieve for this project, for this program, for this event, or for this campaign? And then you then go down to the communications objective. I hope I'm communicating. Please share in the comments, let me know. So then you've done your audience, you look at your stakeholders, then you think about what the brand communication strategy is, because definitely there's a brand that is at the center of whatever this project or this program or what the business activity plan is. So what's the communication strategy for that brand? Because the brand has to be positioned, you need to market the brand, you need to amplify the brand. And you take the opportunity that that calendar year or that project or that program is presenting to communicate and position or market and amplify the brand. So what your strategy and plan is already saying where you want to position your brand to be. You then make sure that your plan builds events, campaigns, messaging, content that supports that strategy. Are you understanding what I'm saying? There's so much that one can share with this, but I'm just trying my best to throw it out there. If you come into class, you get a sense of it. But I'm just saying, for you to build a comprehensive communication strategy, these are all the elements that need to be there. I know that sometimes you may not have all the time to do all of this, but I'm saying choosing not to do some is better than you don't even know that this is how to do it. Because when you then need a comprehensive one, you are likely to come up with a plan that has holes in it. And I've seen this happen a lot. And if you are doing something that is complex, that really requires the holistic communications, like the full option communications thing. If you don't have a framework in your mind, an understanding of how to build that integrated and comprehensive plan, you will, whatever it is you come up with, there will be some shortfall in it. So then your brand communications, you have talked about that storytelling and all of that. Messaging, strategy, and plan. Now, what do we want the audience to know? How do we want them to feel about what we're doing? And what do we need them to do? Very important. That do is very important. Now, bear in mind that you have different needs for different audiences. The messaging should be consistent. So there will be consistent messaging, but the ask for different audiences will differ. So for those audiences, for instance, for your investors, for donors, potential donors, for customers that you actually need them to take action, there will be more detailed messaging. The messaging to them will be tailored. So in a campaign, you don't just leave everything at one level because, it's convenient for you to do so. Yes, there's the messaging that will go out to everybody. It must be consistent. But at some level, and those may happen offline, may happen, in fact, most likely in safe spaces, where you then build on that high-level messaging, and then you then drill down, tailor specifically for the audience. That's also part of the strategy. But you will not be contradicting yourself. It's not like, okay, you're going to say something to this audience that will contradict what you say to another audience. No, it's just that there is more detail and there are actions that are required of certain stakeholders based on their interest and influence in what it is you're doing, which may not be for every other person, but it's not supposed to be contradictory. Because if it's contradictory, then you have a transparency issue. And if somebody who is in both spaces, they connect to one another, they will find out that contradiction, and that will be a problem for you. So the reason why you have this framework and you create it in a way that you put everything together is to prevent those kind of inconsistencies, where the same brand has diluted or differentiated messaging, not even differentiated, because it can be differentiated, but it's still consistent. But the contradictory messaging and conflicting messaging, consistency of messaging, clarity of messaging is a major one of the 3 C's of communications. Consistency, clarity, there's something else. I can't remember what the third one is, but that consistency and clarity is very important. And this framework enables you to do that because you are putting everything together in one space. So the content strategy then is where you now talk about how to communicate. In other words, is it going to be visual communication? Is it going to be editorial? Is it going to be videos? What am I going to use? It's infographics, it's the press statement, all of that will come through. Again, the strategy and then the plan. Because the strategy will tell you, we want to reach this sort of audience, we want a visual approach, we want it to be bold, we want it to be motivational, we want it to be inspirational. Then you then interpret what that content strategy means and begin to break it down to, therefore, we're going to buy some slots in this, we're going to create this kind of content, visual content, mobile first, something that can be on the smartphone, so you begin to break it down into knots and bracks. So the plan is very much a tactical space, but it's guided by the thinking that is provided in the strategy. I hope I'm communicating. So finally, platform strategy, that's where you now talk about who, in other words, who are your spokespeople, who are the voices that we're going to name, and where will we communicate? In other words, websites, social media, internal platforms, and all of that. And everything we've talked about in this communication strategy space applies both for internal and external audience as well. So both for internal communications and external. And of course, you have your key performance indicators and metrics to round it up. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is how strategic communications works. Join us in class on November 27th to learn more. Look forward to seeing you in class. Thank you.